Well, Dad, Chris from NASCAR Planet shared a clip of you on Instagram yesterday of you qualifying at Atlanta in 2009, and it got me to thinking about how good of a qualifier you were in your career. Um, you know, what made you such a good qualifier?
I don't know. It was exhilarating for me. I was sort of scared. I really wasn't sure. I would always really push past what I thought was possible. And so, especially as the racetracks got bigger, in size to the intermediates, now, I just wasn't sure I was going to make it back. Dover, even Richmond, so many of those racetracks. I just blocked everything out 100%, and it was all just such a m- huge focus on um going faster than you had ever had, just beyond the limits, just the limits and then some. And it just was really special to me. It was something that I really loved, I loved doing, but I was scared at the same time, and that mixture was just really fun for me. And it was something that I was, you know, historically good good at from 1977 when we really first started doing time trials. I didn't do a lot of time trials on dirt where we timed in, but once we started racing on pavement, I always qualified as good or better, than we thought we had for a car.
You know, I always remember you talking about how you would drive the car, to its limit, almost beyond its limit. But I can't think of a time, and at least in NASCAR, where you actually wrecked the car trying to qualify it. I mean, did that ever happen?
I don't remember ever wrecking qualifying. I remember at Rockingham, having it step out, and going way up the racetrack, winding up in the back of the pack. I got a lap, but it was horrible. It was 30th or something, and I couldn't ever stand, starting back that far. Um, so had a close call there, and I'm sure I've had a few close calls, but I never just packed it into the wall. But I sure thought I was. I sure thought I was going to. Gosh, that was fun. That was one of my favorite parts. You know, a lot of drivers say they put in qualifying laps in the race at certain times. I never did that because I didn't have a high confidence that I was going to make it. I didn't know for sure. And in racing, I had to be sure I was going to make it to the end. So I raced the car a little bit different with a totally different mindset where I considered the consequences of things. There was a lot more going on in my head. There was virtually nothing going on in my head when I qualified. I mean, it was all that, and that was it. No repercussions, no, nothing. Just, you know, go faster than you think. I always drove it into the corner deeper and picked up the throttle sooner. That was my deal. How do you go faster? How do you pick up that much? And it's like, I drive it in deeper and pick up the throttle sooner.
Well, you've always been known as being super intense, but this is one of my favorite stories. I've got to share this with the fans. So, anybody that doesn't know, you're a little bit hyperactive, a little bit. And one of Dad's deals is he can't sit still very long. And so, one of the things about Dad, if you watch when he sits down, especially if he's got something on his mind, his legs will shake back and forth. And so when he would sit, in his car on pit road in the qualifying line, his car would shake back and forth because his legs. Tell that story.
Yeah, the car would rock. I didn't realize it because it, and Arlene gets on me all the time because I do it on the sofa too. Um, and she says, "Why do you do that?" And I say, "Because it feels good." I don't know. It feels right. So yeah, so you could actually, if you looked really close, you could see the car rocking back and forth a little bit. And then, of course, Jack discovered what was going on. And then I would have guys, you know, team guys like crew chiefs or something from other cars. They'd walk by the car and, while I was in line to qualify, and they'd reach in and put their hand on my knee to stop it. And of course Jack discovered it early on, probably when we were running so fast in '89 and getting so many poles. But he discovered it, and so then he would come and check and make sure I was doing it, because he wanted it to be happening. So yeah, it was kind of a little bit of a joke that kind of went around. The competitors wanted me to quit it, and Jack wanted to make sure I was doing it, and I couldn't help it. That's just that is just part of me.
Well, who was it that one time you weren't doing it and your car was still? Who was it that came up to the car and reached in, grabbed your legs, said, "Get those legs going"?
I don't remember who it was, but that's happened more than once. Like I
Yeah.
said, I've had people try to reach in and stop it, and I have had people say, "Get them legs going."
Well, you were one hell of a qualifier. I mean, 56, poles in the Cup Series. One of NASCAR's best qualifiers in the era that you raced. But what? Who were some of the guys that were the toughest to out qualify? I know Alan Kulwicki you mentioned was one of them. Talk about Alan, and who else would you put up there with him?
I put no one in the same category or league with Alan. There's multiple reasons why it was, Alan stands out. We were, people could consider us friends, but we were rivals. And I haven't read the definition of a rival. We weren't enemy rivals, but we had a rivalry going because we knew we were the one. I knew he was the one, and he knew I was the one. And we had epic, epic pole battles at Pocono, Dover, Charlotte, many places where one of us would go out early and be on the pole, and everybody knew nobody could touch it, you know. But we knew the other was still left to go, and it was epic. Alan was equally spectacular at qualifying, um, and I like to tell this because this is how I remember Alan, and I'm not saying it's historically perfectly accurate, but it is in my mind, and that's all that matters. So, for example, epic qualifying stories at Dover's. Alan crashes in practice on Friday before qualifying, wipes his car out. They pull out their backup car and are getting it ready, while I go out and sit on the pole, and nobody's going to be able to touch it. And Alan goes out last because he got exempt from going out whenever he's supposed to go out because he was getting his car ready, and he goes out with 0 laps on that car, and the last lap he made he crashed, and he goes out and he beats me. That's the way I remember. That's how fierce of a qualifier Alan Kulwicki was. That to me is just unconscionable. How you could do that, how you could have that kind of confidence. But Steve Neal said on Dale Jr.'s download, about my confidence, And I had a lot of confidence, and Alan did too. I had some epic pole battles with Trickle, but that was prior to NASCAR. In NASCAR, I never had anything that rivaled what Alan and I did because we were both, we both could qualify better than the cars that we had. I mean, it was unbelievable what Alan could do. When you would think there was no way, and he'd just pull off, this stuff and just set your hair on fire, man. It was crazy.
Wow. I mean, I knew he was a good qualifier, but I didn't realize, like, I'd never heard that story before. That is crazy.
Yeah, I can't say that it's historically accurate, but it's historically accurate in my mind, and I believe it happened. But if it didn't, um, if it wasn't that he beat me off the pole, he still got the pole, and I wasn't the guy that was on the front row. I mean, I know he did that. I know he went out on zero lap backup car and stuck it on the pole at Dover, which is not, it just shouldn't be humanly possible.